So I'm Nick. I'm an alcoholic. I took my last drink August 3rd, 2018. I have a sponsor who knows that he's my sponsor, and I sponsor others too. Um, he told me to kind of validate myself. I kind of talked to him before. I was like super nervous. I'm not really like into talking about people. And he's like, dude, like share your experience. Why don't you share all this self-inflicting pain? And I'm like, oh my God, dude. But yeah, I guess I'll just kind of like start in the background or my background and then go from there. And then hopefully I don't run out of words in like 5 minutes. So I took my first drink when I was 14 years old. And like I've heard a lot of speakers like share about their first drink, and a lot of people talk about their first drink, and like I definitely related like that. As soon as I took my first drink, like I felt like I could finally breathe, like this weight was lifted off me, I guess. And my first time drinking, like nothing bad happened. Like we had fun. I mean, we were at a campfire. It was a lot of fun. Cried a bunch about my dog that had died. That was pretty much the night. But yeah, I didn't drink. I drank that time, and then I didn't drink for a while. But like even like, and when I was younger, like I always like, I didn't know what it was at that point, but I always like had to have something in my life. Like I could never just like exist like in my own skin. That was never like possible for me. I was always uncomfortable. So like whether it was like cigarettes or like pornography or weed, like I always had to have like there was always something in my life that like made me whole, or I felt as though it made me whole. And I'd like go in and out of like those phases. Like I did pretty good in school. I was kind of a pain in the ass, but like I did well in school and everything. And then probably like in high school, probably around like 18, like it was just like a huge like stoner, like drugs are part of my story, for sure. And like I just kind of did that for a while, and I didn't see a problem with it. I was just a kid having fun, whatever. And so also growing up, I was basically a church kid, like born and raised in the church, like through the private school system, everything, like, that's how I was raised. So like, I guess my parents just like were blind and like didn't think anything was going on at that time. Yeah, I don't really know. But in college is kind of when like my drinking took off, I guess you could say. I was like literally in like Bible college, and I wanted to be a pastor because like, that's how I was raised. That's what I should be doing. I should be involved in the church. But I kind of just, I started partying, and then I'd party on the weekends. I'd like do all my stuff. But eventually like through partying, I would start drinking like when I wasn't partying, just because like I liked the way it made me feel, and like I thought I could think properly, and like I would always say, oh, I wish I could just like feel like this all the time, but like not have to drink. But I couldn't find that balance. Before you know it, I'm skipping classes because I'm too hungover. I can't make it. There's no way. I'm sick as hell. Like, eventually I dropped out. I couldn't do it, and like I was off to the races at that point, and like from that point I just kind of existed and like just stayed fucked up, and like I would do anything to stay fucked up, like whether that was stealing from my family or my friends, or like, you know what I mean? I became like, I don't want to say good at lying, but I definitely became a liar. Like my whole life was a fucking lie, and I like had to cover up lies with other lies, and it was just like a mess. And so yeah, eventually like my parents didn't want me anymore. They couldn't handle like the way I was living. So I moved in with my grandmother, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. I'm going to have more freedom. Like everything's going to be good. The first night I get here, I start drinking, and this is probably like 5 years ago. And like from that point on, like it just like, I'm not going to talk like too much about it. It essentially like became Groundhog Day. Like every day, my only goal was to drink. That's all I cared about, was getting my drink. Like I woke up in the morning, that's all I wanted to do was drink. I was still telling myself that I was having fun. I'd get online, play video games, like talk shit to people, drink. Like it was fun. It was great. eventually I don't know when the shift was, but eventually it shifted into like I was a mess if I wasn't drinking. Like I'd wake up, I'm fucking just awful. And like towards the end, I guess this is not so much a moment of clarity, but it was a moment where I'm like, oh shit, like this isn't normal, this isn't right. And like this was towards the end of my drinking, and I woke up like one morning, and like it was like my first morning that I had like the shakes and shit. And I woke up and I was like, having a panic attack, and like my heart's racing, and I felt like I was dying. I called my mom crying. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I feel awful. Um, but I could never put it into my mind that it was the drinking. It was alcohol that was doing this to me. Like even when I was miserable. So like anyway, like my mom's over here, my grandparents over here, everybody's over here at my house because I'm like upset. I'm like shaking. I'm like literally. So this might sound weird, but like I'm like I look at my arms, like on my veins, and my arms are just like blue. I'm like, what the fuck? Like I'm dying. Like this is awful. And like what had happened was no, I hadn't showered in a month, and the coloring from my clothes was on my skin. And like my grandma's sitting there like scrubbing it off my arm. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm not dying, okay, whatever. But like anyway, so like I'm shaking so bad I can't even barely stand. So I'm in the shower, butt naked, in this shower chair. My whole family's at the house, and I'm just like, I'm dying, dude. Like I'm miserable. And that's when I had this moment. I'm like, this isn't right. Like this is not how I'm meant to live. And had this great moment. I'm like, I'm gonna stop drinking. Like I bought some beer, and I weaned myself off alcohol. It took me like 3-4 days. I weaned myself off. And I was like, I'm never gonna do this again. I weaned myself off. There was no like more withdrawals going on. 2 days later, I'm drunk. I had this like horrible, like what I consider like traumatic thing that I'll never forget. Like I'll never forget how I felt in that moment. And like I drank again. That's what I'm like, I'm fucking crazy. There's something fucking wrong with me. People would always call me an alcoholic. And it was just like a joke to me. I'm like, yeah, Nick, yeah, I'm a real big alcoholic, guys. Like, when I went to parties, I was the one who made a fool of myself. I was always the one who went a step too far. And so this would have been, my birthday party last year. I drank heavier than I ever had in my entire life. And there was like a lot of drugs involved and everything, and it was just a terrible night. I made a total fool of myself. Like I was so drunk. My friends said I just like looked at them and laughed and just like pissed my pants, just like in front of everyone, just wide awake, just pissed my pants. And I woke up that next morning with like, oh, you guys like threw me an awesome birthday party. This was sweet. And they're like, dude, that was the worst night ever. You have a problem, bro. And I'm like, what? No, that was fun. You guys had fun. They're like, yeah, we had fun for a little bit until you like started snorting some shit and drinking. And then it got really bad. I'm like, oh, fuck. So then there's again this other moment, like wake up call, and I'm like, shit. So like from that moment, I did try to control my drinking. I wasn't drinking every day. I had like weaned myself down. Like I would have a pint like every few days or something, but sometimes then I'd go on a spree for like a week, and then I wouldn't drink for a week, or then I wouldn't drink for a month, and then I'd drink the whole next month. And so then I hit this place where I got this really like bad stomach virus. And it was just like tearing me up. It was C. diff. It was like a form of C. diff, which is really nasty if you know what that is. So yeah, that was just fucking me up, and like I was miserable, and I just felt like shit, and it was literally shitting my brains out basically. So my doctor gave me some meds for that, and he's like, I'm going to give you these meds, but when you take these, they have the same effect of okay. So I didn't, I was really sick. I was taking the meds, but I knew what ad abuse would do to me, and I didn't want to feel like that. So I didn't drink. I stayed sober for those 2 months. And in between then, I guess my friends had talked amongst each other, and one of my friends who was in AA, I didn't know at the time, started like messaging me. He was like, hey, Thursday night I hang out with like people our age and we were just like doing this sober thing. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, yeah, I'm really sick, so like I can't. But something in my mind, and I still don't know why I said this, but I told him, I said, just keep asking me. I don't know why I said that. I have no clue why. So like I get through these 2 months, and he hits me up. Like he hits me up literally the day I'm like off the medication. I'm all good. Of course I've went and bought a bottle at this time. I have a bottle. I haven't drank it yet, but I got a bottle of liquor in my car, like ready to go. I'm like, I'm off the medicine. I can finally drink. Thank God. And just like that, just further like promotes like this insanity. Like that, my first thought when I'm off these meds is I got to get fucked up. So I go to this meeting. I don't even know what I'm going to. I don't even know it's AA at the time. He's like, yeah, we got like a business meeting before though, so you got to like sit through that. I'm like, what the fuck? So I go to this committee like business meeting. I have no idea what anyone's talking about at all. They're like making motions, and I'm like, I just want to go home and get drunk. What are you guys doing? Like, anyway, so they're talking about this like big camping trip they're planning for the weekend or whatever. It's called Camp Unity. It's actually coming back around soon. It's awesome. And they're like, oh, we need someone to like help us like make a flyer. I'm like, oh, I know how to like do some graphic design stuff. I could help you guys with that. And then before I know it, I'm graphics chair on a committee, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Sorry, I swear a lot. I'm working on it. So yeah, and then I went to a meeting after. The meeting was right after. And I went to this meeting. It's my home group. It's called TGIT. It's in Oakland County, Michigan. It's a really great meeting. It's probably like the biggest meeting in our area. I went to this meeting, and I had no idea. I'd never been to an AA meeting, like through all my years of drinking and everything. Like AA never even like crossed my mind. It's like I knew it existed, but alcohol was never my problem in my head. So that wasn't something I ever pursued. So went to my first meeting basically, and like just the first person that spoke, I just started relating, and everyone else kept speaking, and I just kept relating, and like then I'm getting pissed. I'm like, fuck, like I get it. Like I really truly am an alcoholic. Like I related to all these other alcoholics, and I was pissed at like you people. I'm like, I don't want to be a fucking alcoholic. All I got to do is not drink, and like my life's gonna be okay. So I went to this first meeting, had like this breakthrough, like, oh, this is amazing. I went home and got drunk right after. But this time in my head, it was like, this is like my last hurrah. Like I'm going to drink this one time, and then I'm going to try this out. I'm going to see what happens. So I go home and get drunk that night. They all hit me up. They're like, hey, we're going camping like Friday through Sunday. You ready to go? I'm like, no, I'm hungover, dude. Like I can't go. Anyway, so they end up convincing me to go. They pick me up and I go. And so I go to this thing that it's called Camp Unity, and like it's cool at first. I'm like, okay, these guys are all right. Later in the night, there's like this dope DJ, and like people are dancing. I'm like, what are these guys doing? Like, there's no way they're fucking sober. You can't have fun sober. That's not possible. And that was like my first glimpse of like, I guess what recovery could look like. And like through that weekend, I just had a lot of realizations to people, and I ended up talking to this guy, and I was like, how do I do this stuff? He's like, well, you need a sponsor. I'm like, well, can you sponsor me? He's like, yeah, sure. And I dove into these steps. Probably like 3 days after that, we dove into those steps. And yeah, I don't know it was different this time, because I've tried so many times in my life to not drink, to be sober, and I've held a little sober time together here and there. But I was always miserable, like no matter what. I always stayed miserable. And like, so I gave these steps an honest try, and like anything my sponsor told me, I fucking did it. He could have told me to do just about anything, and I probably would have done it. And I just, I really followed his directions, and I worked these steps. And step one, I was already there. Like, yeah, total alcoholic. And he's like, well, do you think there like might be a God out there? And I had all these resentments against God. I'm like, well, couldn't stay sober through Bible college. Oh, that's my timer. couldn't stay sober through all this. I'm like, God doesn't care about me. He's left me. And I don't know how, but somehow I finally got to a place where it's like, okay, there might be something pulling the strings, and there's probably something out there better that can run my life better than I can, that I have been trying to do. So, I just kept doing them. And, I got through the fourth step. I didn't sit on it for long. I want to say it took me 2 or 3 days to do my fourth step. I wasn't completely honest on it. I didn't put everything on there. I was as honest as I was capable of at that time. I got what I could on there. And I worked through the 12 steps in about 2.5 months, and then I got through the steps, and I stayed sober. 5 minutes. I still I still am sober today. God willing, on August 3rd, I'll be doing this for a year now and have a year of sober time. I've never been able to do that in my life. The most I've been able to piece together is like 3 or 4 months. At the same time, like it all can be really overwhelming for me, and like where I'm at like right now is like I've gotten to a place where like I realize, it talks about this shift. I've shifted into where this is like a spiritual thing for me now. Like God keeps me sober, and He's the only one who can. No human power can possibly help me. It's impossible, for me. And shoot. Yeah, just like the place I'm in, like right now, I was like riding the fellowship stuff really hard, and I got to a point where I'm like, this is not helping me. Like it's actually like hurting me. I'm like too involved with everything, and I'm like, this fear of like missing out if I'm not at everything was like making me really insecure and really like fucking me up. And I've definitely struggled, through recovery. That insanity's gone. Like that, the obsession to drink, yes, that's gone. Like when I wake up, I don't want to drink, and when I go to bed, I don't want to drink. But I've had times in my recovery with like this self-inflicting pain that I've put on myself where I stop doing this. I get really comfortable. Everything's going really good. And like I stopped doing my step work, and I stopped living in these steps and like on this spiritual basis. And then I start getting a little sick, and like I've definitely had like alcoholic cravings like through these 10 months, more than I'd like to admit, but what always gives me hope, and I know I don't have any time left, but it's actually like in Dr. Bob's Nightmare, and I read this when I get these cravings because I've put myself in these spots, and it's like Dr. Bob's story. Unlike most of our crowd, I did not get over my craving for liquor much during the first 1 years of abstinence. It was almost with me, but at no time have I been anywhere near yielding. I used to get terribly upset when I saw my friends drink, and I knew I could not. But I schooled myself to believe that though I had once had the same privilege, I had abused it so frightfully that it has withdrawn. So it does not behoove me to squawk about for it. After all, nobody ever had to throw me down and pour liquor down my throat. And like that's just, I don't know why that gives me hope, but it does. I'm like, okay, one of the co-founders had cravings for alcohol, and I'm having cravings for alcohol, and it's like it's not so abnormal that alcoholics having cravings for alcohol. But I just, I got to stay grounded. And like the past couple weeks, that's what it was. I do not feel connected to my higher power right now, but I'm still praying like throughout the day, like a lot. And I just, my friend always would say to me, when things are good, continue. When things are bad, continue. And that's all I can do. I do my daily steps that I need to do, and I try to connect with my higher power. And, I'm not I don't want to drink. And that's a miracle for me to not be drinking. And yeah, I'm just grateful that, I get to live the way I do as long as I keep maintaining my sobriety, basically. Like, because like my step work from like a week or like a few months ago, like doesn't keep me sober today. I have to keep doing this every day. And that's all I got. Thank you.